Hello, everybody. Welcome to another ASEAN Pacific Affairs episodes. In these conversations, we are going to talk about the differences between the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea, what's going on in the region. This is a most critical part of the maritime trade routes of the world, and in terms of the energy and the maritime resources, this region is quite a rich region, South China Sea and also West Philippine Sea. But today we are bringing another issues on the table. What is the differences actually? What is the West Philippine Sea? What is the South China Sea? And I am going to discuss with my guest. My guest is Dr. Celia Lemkin. Let me introduce my guest to you, the audiences. Dr. Celia is a founder and a global chairperson of the Nation Youth Movement for the West Philippine Sea, NYMWPS, and chair of board of trustees of the NYMWMC Inc., an advocate for human rights and good governance, environment, and health. Welcome, Dr. Celia. Thank you for joining my show.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Lokman, and thank you so much for inviting me in your show. And good evening to all your listeners and watchers in your program.
And also, I think you
Thank
can
you.
say the good day, good morning, depend to the different time zone
Oh yeah,
who are
yes, yeah,
watching us
that's
from
true.
the other parts of the world.
I would say, yeah, I would just say good day to everyone.
Dr. Celia, now the issues of the South China Sea and the West Philippines is one of the, I think, the most important issues in the world. And you are living in the region, you spend a significant amount of time to dealing with these issues, know about these issues. You're also the human rights advocates. So could you please a little bit elaborate us what is the South China Sea, what is the West Philippine Sea, what is the historical of the disputes, what's going on actually in the region?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lama. Of course, when you talk about the South China Sea, that's composed of 1.4 million, right, square miles. And when you talk about the West Philippine Sea, that's the part of the South China Sea that belongs to the Philippines, right? So now, maybe you can ask, how did you come with the name of West Philippine Sea? Of course, on September 5, 2012, then late President Benigno Aquino the third, uh, he signed the executive order, I would say administrative order 29, naming the West Philippine Sea. Of course, that includes the Scarborough Shoal and our Kalayaan, which is Spratly Islands in international name. All right, so that's how the name of the West Philippine Sea came into birth. Okay, I would say. Thank you so much. So that's the difference. Of course, when during the international conference or when you're talking to some international community, most of them they use the South China Sea. But for the sake of us, for the West Philippine Sea, we have to mention West Philippine Sea when we're talking about the West Philippine Sea. That's a big difference. And we all know, of course, I would say that the start of this dispute between the Philippines and China, since you're asking about that, it all started in April 2012. Okay, in on April 8, 2012, the Philippine Navy surveillance and of course plane was able to see some Chinese fishing vessels in the Scarborough Shoal. Scarborough Shoal, of course, the local name is Bajo de Marsimlo, Panatag Shoal. All right, so in Scarborough Shoal is an international name. And then, of course, the BRP, Gregorio del Pilar, that's our Philippine Coast Guard vessel, was sent to the shoal. And that confirmed the presence of these Chinese vessels, of course, that's coming from China, with all the who collected illegally all our giant clams, right? Of course, the fish and everything, all the marine resources, marine life in the Scarborough Shoal. And then, of course, there was a standoff, I would say. There was a standoff since, of course, the Philippines has has to send our vessels there, and of course China has their maritime surveillance ships, of course the Chinese Coast Guard, and who knows, they have these militia ships that we're talking right now. So uh, I don't want to elaborate on what happened, but of course, both were asked to leave the Scarborough Shoal. Unfortunately, China did not leave the Scarborough Shoal. That's why, since April 2012, China occupied the Scarborough Shoal already, ever since up to now. And because of this, maybe I can continue, right? Why there was a dispute and how the Philippines got into the arbitration case. Of course, the Philippine government that time, during the time of late Ambassador De Rosario, who was the secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs then, you know, probably there were like about 50 attempts to have dialogue with China, I would say. However, China kept on saying, no, we won't have a dialogue with you, Philippines, unless you will tell us that the Scarborough Shoal is theirs, that belongs to China. Of course, the Philippines will not agree with that. That's why on January of 2013, the Philippines filed the arbitration case against China's nine dash line. You see the U shape right in that map, South China Sea, because that's what China's claiming, that it all belongs to them. But of course, on July 12, 2016, China lost, and the victory won at the arbitral tribunal, declaring that China's nine dash claim has no historical rights or no legal basis at all. All right. And we all know, Dr. Lokman, that the claimants at the South China Sea, of course, you have Malaysia, Vietnam, Brunei, Taiwan, of course, the Philippines. So that's the I would say a brief history of how it came into this kind of dispute, and of course, China. We all know that China never acknowledged, never respected, never abide the ruling of the arbitral tribunal in 20.
Dr. Celia, as part of the history, what will be your opinion about the colonial legacy on the South China Sea? Because today's nine-dash line reclamation by China going back to the 1940, and even before the Communist Party of China going to the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang of China. And later we know that the Filipinos became independent in 1945, I think, and later some other Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia and the Indonesia, they became in 1960 and 50, they got their independence. Do you believe that is there any the colonial legacy on these issues, the South China Sea and West Philippine Sea, and the climates, and contribute to the disputes between countries and for
Well,
today?
well, actually, of course, China was claiming, like the 2,000-year-old historic rights, their map, like still during the Ming Dynasty, of course, right? But of course, in the Philippines, we have the mother of all maps. We call it the mother of all maps, the the Murillo Velarde map of 1970. I would no, not 1734. Okay, you can see there the Panatag Shoal. That they it was there like Panakot. That was the old name for the Scarborough Shoal, the Panatag Shore, or the Baho de Masinloc. Those are the local names for Scarborough Shoal. And you can see the Spratly Islands up there in that map. All right, so uh, this map was actually provided during the arbitration case as one of the evidences. So that's only one. And of course, as you were saying, the nine dash line, when the Taiwan now, of course, they lost in the civil war with the China, the People's Republic of China now. Uh, it all started with that. But of course, um, they continued to claim about the nine dash line. And by the way, Dr. Lokman, it's not anymore a 9 dash line that China is claiming. It's a 10 dash line
In Dasha,
already.
yes.
They included, of course, now the India and Nepal. So it's becoming, this was last year. So they want more. They want more in the South China Sea, right? So
So, Dr. Celia, over the decades, how the claims and counterclaims between the Chinas and Philippines in the South China Sea and also in the case of the West Philippine Sea evolved over the decades, particularly and the near history or the near history.
well, I would say, of course, when it all started, as I told you, in April 2012, and we won at the Arbitral Tribunal, The Hague, Netherlands, on July 12, 2016. As I said, I mentioned earlier, China does not abide the arbitral ruling. So China just continue. Of course, China, we have the so-called Zamora Reef in Filipino, okay? And it's a Subi Reef for the international name. How it all started, as like what China did, okay, I will start with first with the Subi Reef, right? China built a shelter. They kept saying, "Oh, this is for the safety for the Chinese fishermen in case of bad weather." So they started building a shelter, and this Subi Reef is only 12 nautical miles from Pag-asa Island or the Tito Island, which the Philippines has a sovereignty over in Pag-asa Island. Tito Island is a part of the Kalayaan municipality, or in English, we call it the Spratly Islands, the Kalayaan. And it became under the sovereignty of the Philippines in 1978, right? So when the late President Marcos proclaimed that this Kalayaan municipality, that was in 1978. And of course, I would say that historically, we have all our rights in the in these areas that I have mentioned. Another one I would say is the mischief reef or the Panganiban reef in Filipino term. In 1995, China, okay, this same alibi built a shelter, and now, of course, it is now a military base of China. Okay, these are the two ones, and same in Subi Reef, it's already militarized. And can you imagine that's only 12 nautical miles away from our people down there in Pag-asa Island or the Tito Island? So these are what China's been doing, and of course there are still ongoing reclamation activities of China down there in Sabino Shoal, and there's a lot of shoal, of course. We have 3 years ago they have done this already, but I will not go into much details on that one. But I would say, despite of the arbitral tribunal's ruling in 2016, China became so more aggressive, right? In the reclamation activities, in building artificial islands, and more, of course, not only in the Philippines, of course, they've been doing that in other claimants, countries, nations, I would say.
Uh,
And of course, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lokman.
yes, Dr. Celia. Now, except Filipino, other countries, stakeholders of the South China Sea also has the issues with their exclusive economic zone. But the Filipino seems to more outspeaker and in the forefront. So, is it possible to say China has agreed with the other countries like the Malaysia, Brunei, and partly with Vietnam, and only has issues with the Philippines, or other countries just silent over the
Well, I would
issues?
well, I would say, I think I would say the victory of the Philippines in the arbitral tribunal in 2016 should apply to the other claimant countries like Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei. I would say yes. In some in some ways, yeah, they're quiet, but they know that they have the same, I would say, uh, ruling that will apply to them because the Philippines won already against China. So whoever, as you know, I would like to explain for those who are not aware about the exclusive economic zone. The exclusive economic zone you're talking about, the 200 nautical miles from the coastline of the state, like for the Philippines. That's within the 200 nautical miles. And you're talking about the natural resources. We have the marine life, we have the oil and gas, of course, in this exclusive economic zone, for example, for the West Philippine Sea, the Filipinos, they have all the sovereign rights. We're talking about sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea. Like, for example, oil exploration or production in the West Philippine Sea within the 200 nautical miles, that should benefit only the Filipino people. So, same, of course, the other countries, they have their own exclusive economic zone also. And basically, that's the problem of what China's been doing to us, Dr. Lokman. Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Celia, the issues in the region over the West Philippine Sea, whether on the South China Sea, day by day became more internationalized and bring external power to the region. And also now the United States also in the region, and sometimes India send their warships, and Australia also, and Japan. So, how do you see the future of this disputes, and what will be the next step? Is there any solution, or will be worse?
I would say, what China has been doing now is merely a pure intimidation. I'm talking on behalf of, I'm talking in terms of our West Philippine Sea, right? Because, in our previous administration of the Philippines, who was very, of course, he was very close to China. Um, he did not really support the victory of the Philippines in the arbitral tribunal. So I would say, of course, that the present president of the Philippines, Bongbong Marcos, he's really very assertive, very strong, very brave enough to assert our sovereign rights in our West Philippine Sea. With the presence, of course, with the joint patrols, you know, and military exercises like from the United States of America, you got France, Australia, Japan, and other countries, and you know, that is better. That is better because we have the so-called the the freedom of navigation in this EEZ. All right. For the economic part, it should be the Philippines who should be, doing as I mentioned earlier, with all the sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea. That will give a message to China that, this South China Sea, on that other part, of course, in the West Philippine Sea, we have this freedom of navigation under the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. We have that. And that's an international law that China has to abide. That's why China should not be bullying. China should not be bullying our military men or even our fishermen, in the West Philippine Sea. That's what China's been doing. They use lasers, they use water cannons, they injured some military men in our vessels. They damaged our Philippine vessels. So that's not really right. So what's happening in Ayungin Shoal, the second Thomas Shoal, right? With the resupply mission, right? Giving all this food supply with our military personnel there at BRP Sierra Madre in that second Thomas Shoal or the Ayungin Shoal. And not only that, Dr. Lokman, I would like to share to you what Chinese Coast Guard and even the Chinese militia vessels, have been doing to our fishermen. For example, in Scarborough Shoal, they have been harassing our fishermen. They're using the rubber boats. They're also water cannoning our fishermen. Can you imagine? Compared to the big fishing boats of China and to the Filipino who are just having banca, a small boat, you know, what Where would you put our fishermen down there in the sea? That's my big concern.
Dr. Celia, as I mentioned in your biography, you are a human rights advocate. Do you think really what is the exact source of these disputes? China, for example, is a great country, 1.4 billion country as a population. They really need to the fish and resources. That's why they are pushing, became harsh toward their neighbors. Or China has the assertive ideas because it became a global superpower. So, is there any difference between these two subject and object?
Well, I would say, for example, yeah, we're talking about the EEZ, right? The exclusive economic zone. We focus on the economic resources that we get from that exclusive economic zone within the 200 nautical miles, right? Within the 200 nautical miles from the baseline of the coastal state, which is, of course, the Philippines. So you can see, uh, I would say, let's say the West Philippine Sea. For example, I would tell you, how much do you have? How much do you have oil? How much oil does the South China Sea have? You have 11 billions of barrels of oil in the South China Sea. And in the West Philippine Sea, you have 6.2 million barrels of oil. And in the South China Sea, you have 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. In the West Philippine Sea, you have 12 billion, cubic feet of natural gas. You can imagine, with the population of China, you're talking about billions, right? 1.3 billion people. I know China has oil, but it's not enough for them. So basically, it's all about economic. I would say it's economic reasons why China is doing this, and we all know what are the natural resources in this South China Sea, and of course, I mentioned to you how much we have in our West Philippine Sea, right? And by the way, the Tayungin Shoal is very near. The second Thomas Shoal is just very near to the Recto Bank or the Reed Bank. That's not being explored yet, but there are a lot of oil reserves there and natural gas. Dr. Lokman.
And Dr. Sel, the Philippines is also a member of the ASEAN Southeast Asian States Organization. What are the latest diplomatic efforts being made by ASEAN and other international organizations to mitigate these tensions or find a solution at least?
Well, of course, they have the so-called the code of conduct. You're aware about that, but of course, they have not come into really. Of course, China will not abide with that code of conduct. That is for the peace and stability in the region. You know, we have the code of conduct for the South China Sea. Of course, last year they have the 56th ASEAN Summit, right? Uh, and China was there, but what is the point of China joining the ASEAN summit and agreeing with this maritime engagements, I would say, and yet you are very aggressive now of what doing to for example, the Philippines, the West Philippine Sea. I mean, to the point of to the point of I would say you have already devastated China. You have devastated the livelihood of our fishermen because they don't have much catch anymore. They cannot even go to the Scarborough Shoal because you're there. Even in the lagoon, you're there. All right. So now they are just in the municipal waters, of course, and some of them they will still risk their lives to go there, but only probably about not 20 nautical miles. So what kind of fish you can catch from there? They have like apparently like 300 pesos equivalent a day, about like less than $6 US dollars a day from the catch. That is not enough to feed their families. So meaning to say, on the humanitarian side, on the human rights side, of course, that's not, to live and to eat, that's a human rights of every human being in this world, right? So that's the one I would say. And there are so many things that China's been doing, of course, like those who were injured during their, we call it the gray zone tactics, right? Because they're using the gray zone tactics like the lasers that blinded temporarily our military men, right? And also the water cannons that injured most of our military men and damage our Philippine vessels. Of course, China knows that because if someone would die, the Mutual Defense Treaty of 1951 between the Philippines and the U.S. will be invoked. Okay, that's why I would say China is using all these tactics, right? Because it needs an armed conflict in order for that Mutual Defense Treaty to be invoked, right? So those are the ones that China, I would say, you're talking about human rights, and, I would say
Dr. Sel,
that's a violation of human rights. Mhm.
Dr. Sel, as I mentioned, the other countries also have these issues over the South China Sea. For example, the Vietnam and
Mhm.
Indonesia over the Natuna Sea. Are these countries looking for an individual or bilateral solving pathway with the China or with the Philippines? They have some program to counter China, or each country is individually will make an agreement with the United States in order to overcome these issues.
Well, for example, in Vietnam, I would say they have a memorandum of agreement with the United States of America. They call it the Riders Program, wherein the law enforcers of Vietnam can ride in the U.S. Coast Guard vessels, right? This is, for example, it can be used for illegal activities, like, for example, illegal fishing activities, like China, what's doing overfishing, unregulated, unreported fishing, right there. And I've been recommending this since, I would say, 4 years ago for the Philippines. Maybe the Philippines can have like what Vietnam has done, to have an agreement with the U.S. Coast Guard to have a riders program, so the law enforcers of the Philippines can ride in the U.S. Coast Guard vessels in order to, of course, to prosecute, or I would say to arrest or to apprehend those who are doing illegal activities. Like, for example, China, the Chinese militia, what they're doing in the West Philippines Sea. I think if I would say the Philippines would enter into such agreement like in Vietnam, that that would lessen that would lessen the bullying, the intimidation of China to our fishermen and to our military men, of course, with the Philippine Coast Guard, in the West Philippine Sea. Of course, I'm not saying only with the United States of America. The Philippines can enter to any countries an ally, with that kind of agreement. So in that way, you can stop or prevent those illegal fishing activities of China. Because, by the way, Dr. Lokman, where can you see that it's our fish in our West Philippine Sea? And these Chinese fishermen, of course, it's being processed in China. They put this preservative and now they export to the Philippines, and the Filipino people are buying the fish so in a high price. And where did that fish come from? From the West Philippine Sea. It's very ironical, isn't it? Very ironical. So those are some of the my recommendation, I would say. And I hope that the Philippine government is listening. So hopefully that can be done. But of course, one thing also, Dr. Lockman, when China was trying to intervene in their oil exploration, of course, they are in Paracel Islands, right? That's what China is claiming up there in Vietnam. Uh, Vietnam is not, even Vietnam has a trading relationship with China. Vietnam is not afraid to expel Chinese vessels from their exclusive economic zone, I would say. Thank you.
Uh, Dr. Celia, over the issues, I would like to say in 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration's decisions impacted legal activities, maybe. Also, there is a United Nations, the law of the sea. How does all this, the legal implementations, affect to the China's behavior in the South China Sea? To some extent, they make it easy for the tensions between the countries, or the China doesn't binding the or any of these legal implementations by the
Yeah,
United.
yeah. Yeah, first of all, of course, first of all, Dr. Lokman, we say that 2016, that's from the arbitral tribunal, right? The Permanent Court of Arbitration is just like a registry office for the case, right? So I would say, uh, China, no, China has no respect, I would say, with the arbitral ruling in of 2016, because otherwise China will not be doing all this aggression, the occupation, the building of artificial islands, etc. Right? The the bullying, the intimidation, harassment, and of course, right now, just last week, China has announced that it will arrest somebody in our, imagine, in our own exclusive economic zone, and without any kind of trial, etc. What is the right of China for doing that? That is their own domestic law. And China cannot apply that to the Philippines or in our exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, in the West Philippine Sea. China, you cannot do that. You have your maritime and security law. No, don't apply that to us, China. I'm telling you right now. So this is merely an intimidation of China to the Filipino people and to our fishermen and whoever will be going there. Of course, this is a result of that last week's voyage, the civilian resupply mission last week, I would say, to the Scarborough Shoal. And purely, it's a pure intimidation. And I don't think, I would say, China will not go to war. No, at all. I don't think China can afford that unless China wants to go back to be a poor country many decades ago.
And Dr. Celia, during our conversation, you mentioned the importance of the natural resources, like the billions of the oil and the gas and the natural resources, and also up to 5 billion US dollar trade flow through the South China, pass through the South China Sea. So, in case of any conflict, or in the current situation between the China and the Filipino, what other parts of the world will be affected from these escalations and the tensions between the countries over the South China Sea? How especially how the world energy or the trades will be affected?
Well, I would like to answer first, in terms of the West Philippine Sea. All right. Okay. First, the oil exploration. Okay. In the Philippines, we have the so-called the Malampayag gas field. That is about 75 kilometers away from Palawan province in the Philippines. All right. Of course, China has no claim on that one. All right. Uh, Now, there is a so-called uh, the reed bank or the recto bank, and we call it the service contract 72. All right. Now, um, it is maybe we can have another webinar for that, Malampaya, Dr. Lokman, because it's kind of like a very complicated, I would say. But I would say to all the Filipino people, that supplies 20% of the energy in Luzon. Luzon is a of course, you have Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. That's a island, of course, in the Philippines. Now with the service contract 72 in the reed bank or the recto bank in Filipino, uh, we have, I mentioned to you how many million barrels of oil, right? And billions of cubic feet of natural gas. I would say that the Philippines cannot even do some kind of oil exploration. There won't be any foreign country, I would say, except China, of course, right? Because China will not stop bullying who gonna be doing this oil exploration activities in our recto bank or in the reed bank. And of course, the service contractors might invite some foreign, oil companies, to work in the oil exploration. That's just one scenario I'm telling you. So who is the country on this earth would invest in the Philippines, right? Except China, because China is already there. That's why he's doing all this aggression in our West Philippine Sea, right? Now, when you talk about the South China Sea, of course, it is a passageway for all these shipping lanes, right? Trillions of dollars a year are being traded. It passed through the South China Sea. One third, of course, of the global economy, the global supply, of course, will be affected. So this one doesn't involve only the Philippines or even those claimants in the South China Sea. It will involve the whole world. It will involve the whole world. And this is the reason why the United States of America and the allies, that's why we have the allies, of course, are doing this freedom of navigation operations or the so-called FONOPs to ensure a peace and stability in the Pacific region. So that's the whole reason why they are there. Okay, so
Dr. Celia, I think we must talk about the external issues, but I would like to little bit mention about the internal politics of the Filipino. In Philippines, I think that the foreign policy pretty much depended on the internal politics and the political parties. From to what extent the Philippines politics have a unified approach toward these issues?
well, I would say presently, regardless of the color of the politician or the political parties, they are supporting. They're supporting our fight in our West Philippine Sea. I would say, of course, even our lawmakers they are supporting this West Philippine Sea issues with China. Except for some, there are some who are China. Of course, you cannot avoid that. There's some Chinese, of course, apologies. There are Filipinos or Chinese apologies, I would say. So that's why I keep telling our people, our Filipino people, please know the facts, know the truth, because there's a lot of propaganda in the social media, Dr. Lokman. Okay, of course, China would do that in order for the people of the Philippines and the rest of the global netizens to believe their narrative, China's narrative.
And Dr. Celia, like other Southeast Asian countries, the Philippines also, I think, have a trade relations with China. Uh, how these trade relations affected by these issues, disputes over the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea islets and island in the region?
Yes. Yeah, no, of course, the trade relations will be affected in a way, of course. I would say even before China even threatened the Philippines, oh, we will not buy your bananas anymore. They did that before. Uh, for me, uh, this is coming from me. This is my opinion. Uh, the Philippines should start having trade relations. You know, not to China. You have Vietnam. You have Southeast Asian nations right there. They can manufacture, whatever that we get or what we import from China, we can. And also the products of the Philippines, we can export that to other countries. So why we have to kneel down to China? Because if China keeps saying we are a friend, though that's now how a friendly nation does to the Philippines and to other nations. Occupying your own property, like for example, you have a neighbor, your neighbor goes to your house, and you let that neighbor enter your house, and then that neighbor occupied your house. I mean, would you allow that? Of course, that's not being friendly. That's not a friend. That's my analogy on that one. So, and also the Philippines should start its manufacturing activities, I would say. In the past, I would say 50 years ago or 40 years ago, we had all these manufacturing industries in the Philippines. But now, of course, it has been transferred to China, like the US. They have all this, they outsource most of them in China, I would say, right? So I'm sorry, Dr. Lokman. For me, I would say we advocated even to boycott made in China products, because once the packet of China is getting hurt or being hurt, China will think twice. So this is, I would say, a concerted effort of all the Filipino citizens and even the world. So maybe China would think twice of what she's doing right now to the Filipino people, to the Philippines, in the West Philippines, and even to other claimant nations, and even to the rest of the world. For example, Dr. Lokman, maybe you're aware of the debt trap of China to the poor countries like Sri Lanka, right? Now Sri Lanka was not able to pay the debt. So China took the port of Sri Lanka. Well, strategically, that's important for China. So China can have a trade going there to the Middle East, for the third island chain. I would say everything is about economy, trade, right? So that's my take on that one, Dr. Lokman.
Uh, Dr. said there is another important developments taking place in the region in the South China Sea. I'm going to mention the Taiwan. There is a new administration taking office in Taiwan, and the China encircled the Taiwan island. So how these developments in Taiwan affected the situation between the Philippines and China? For example, the water cannon between the Philippine Coast Guard and Chinese Coast Guard. How from the Philippines as a country you have disputes with Philippines, you see these developments in the Taiwan, and will affect your relations with China.
Well, of course, Taiwan is one of the claimants, and we have, I would say, trade relations and diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Of course, we have a lot of overseas Filipino workers there in Taiwan, right? So I don't see any kind of problem with Taiwan. But of course, what China's been doing with their one China policy, I don't agree with that. Because of course, China would like to have Taiwan to be its territory. But as we all know, in 1947, 1949, Taiwan is already an independent nation, right? When they lost the civil war with the PRC now, the People's Republic of China. They call Taiwan as the Republic of China, of course, the old one. So I would say there should be no problem, our trade relations or diplomatic relations with Taiwan, the Philippines, and it's all about what China's been doing, of course, even to Taiwan, right? They're doing all these military exercises to, you know, it's all about intimidation again. And believe me, of course, they might be a war. I don't believe in that one. And we have all our allies, the United States of America, and all the allies. I would say they will not allow that to happen. I'm sorry, Dr. Lokman, you are on mute. I can't hear you.
Okay, now you are
Okay.
founder and the global chairperson of the Nation Youth Movement for the West Philippine Sea. Could you please little bit tell us about NYMWPC? When did you found it? Why
Mhm.
did you found it? And what is your current activities for the West Philippine Sea? Could you tell us, please?
All right. Okay. First of all, of course, thank you for asking that. As I mentioned, there was a standoff right in Scarborough Shoal in April 2012, right? So, in order to create public awareness during that time, November 2012, I initiated and launched the International Essay Contest on the West Philippine Sea with the theme, The West Philippine Sea and its Impact in the Future of the Philippines. And as a result of the winners, I thought of I should probably have this movement, and I named it as the National Youth Movement for the West Philippine Sea. And I founded that on September 28, 2015, because during that time, our winners on that essay contest, they were still students and kind of like busy. Of course, now, the mission of the National Youth Movement for the West Philippine Sea uh, is to advocate the preservation of the Philippine sovereignty and territorial integrity. And we have these goals, Dr. Lokman, of course, to create public awareness and education about the West Philippine Sea issues, and to instill patriotism among the Filipino youth, and of course now even to our all Filipinos, and to rekindle their national spirit. The third one is to protect the welfare and rights of the sectors in the West Philippine Sea, such as our Scarborough Shoal fishermen, of course, in Masinloc, Zambales, and neighboring towns of Zambales. We have Bataan, the province of Bataan, Pangasinan, La Union, and, and of course, all our sectors in the West Philippine Sea. And we have the military and civilian residents in Pag-asa Island or Quito Island in the municipality of Calayan, or we call it the Spratly Islands. And of course, our brave military men at the BRP Sierra Madre at the Yungin Shoal, or the second Thomas Shoal. The fourth one is to preserve and to protect the natural resources that includes the marine life, the oil and gas in the West Philippine Sea. As I mentioned earlier, of course, we have those kind of wealth, right? I mentioned already how many billions of oil, barrels of oil, and cubic feet of natural gas. So that is a part of our goals also. And I mentioned to you about Malampaya gas field. That's also our advocacy. That's a part of that one. And activities, of course, recently in March 23, actually, I was a part of this one. The National Youth Movement for the West Philippine Sea did our outreach in Masinloc, Zambales for our Scarborough Shoal fishermen. We had a symbolic sea expedition at the Masinloc waters. Of course, that's in the West Philippine Sea, with 100 fishermen who joined us, and of course, the members and officers, about 10 of us, uh, joined the symbolic sea expedition just to say, uh, to, to tell the whole world that the West Philippine Sea is ours. It belongs to us. We have to assert our sovereign rights in our West Philippine Sea. We also did our medical mission. We provided, of course, free consultations, and I was actually you know, the medical doctor. I attended like 100 patients. We gave free medicines and vitamins, antibiotics, and to about 100 patients, of course, the Scarborough Shoal fishermen and their families. We also provided the freelance for the fishermen, and we gave food packages. We have rice, canned food like a meatloaf, and corned beef, and noodles, and other like oral rehydrating salts, because they got dehydrated when they go fishing. So those are some of the activities, of course. And of course, we have some. Of course, we have been doing this since 2020, Dr. Lokman, and thank you so much for being a part of this one. I started the virtual international conference in July 2020 in order to get the support of the international community. And thank God it's been happening right now. Okay, so we invited a lot of international experts that includes you, Dr. Lokman, and we have the West Philippine Sea Forum, the West Philippine Sea Catch. We invite also experts. So in that way, the people are updated on what's happening, and also we're updated on our neighboring countries. So, like for example, the one in the claimants in the South China Sea, we have Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia. We have experts all over the world, I would say. And we have upcoming fundraising events in order to get funds, right? So we get our funds to help our fishermen and our residents, civilian and military residents in Pag-asa Island Municipality and of course at BRP Sierra Madre. Last December, we have provided some kind of food packs, or I would say we have our gift giving programs to our military men at the BRP Sierra Madre that was endorsed to the Western Command there in Palawan. Those are just some, but there are more. There are more, Dr. Lokman. Creating public awareness and educating the public on what are the issues, current issues, and what's happening in the West Philippine Sea. It's through our webinars, of course. So we can invite, anybody can join in that webinar from the Philippines, and just like you were in our last international conference. So there are more, and we do some. I would say if there's we issue some statements, like for example, what China's been doing to our fishermen or to our military men or to the Philippine vessels in Ayungin Shoal. These are just some. We have to issue some statement. That's the national movement for the West Philippine Sea. And there will be more. Uh, we've been doing this for the past almost 9 years, Dr. Lokman. Thank you so much. I hope I
Uh,
answered your questions.
yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much as well. And Dr. Sally, just as a person and a doctor and the person interested with issues, how do you see the future of these developments, whether on the Philippines, West Philippine Sea, or on the West China Sea? Because there is two neighboring countries has a disputes over the island, and the external powers already involved to the issues. How do you see the feature of the issues? And also, please don't forget to mention about the situation of the fisheries in detail. And also, what kind of the recent developments at the stake, like water cannons, and whether China if still continue to develop the constrictions on the island and islets on the South China Sea. What will
Yes.
be your last comment and the general observations about the future of the region?
Well, actually, I would say that the Philippine government should be very vigilant because China will not stop the reclamation activities and building artificial islands because of the China's expansionism, right? So that's what that's the ambition of China, and we all know it's all about economic reasons. I would say because I mentioned to you how rich the West Philippine Sea is and how rich the South China Sea is, right? So uh, the Philippines is true uh, always on the diplomatic ways of dealing with this one. And some people would ask, "Oh, how come we cannot put water cannons in our Philippine vessels, like in the Philippine Coast Guard?" Of course, we don't agree with that, right? So there's always diplomatic ways to do that. We file diplomatic protests. That's very important. That's documented, right? Regardless of we got 5,000 or 10,000 diplomatic protests, the Philippines should just always do that because it's a documentation that we are protesting what China's been doing to us. All right. And I would say with the presence and of the allies. So Now we have like 5 or 6 countries. We can have more alliances with this to have this kind of freedom of navigation operations and like military exercises and the joint patrols. 4 years ago, this was the suggestion of the National Youth Movement for the West Philippine Sea, Dr. Lokman. That's why I'm happy it's been happening. All right. So the more countries will join the Philippines, the US, France, India, Japan, Australia, I think the better. And I would say China would have a second thought when are more countries, you know, will join the Philippines in the joint patrols and even military exercises in the West Philippine Sea. And I would say even other claimant countries can do that same. So that is a message, that is a strong message to China that China, you have to leave our West Philippine Sea on our part. Okay. And for the other countries, that will be their discretion or their decision, on how they're gonna be dealing with China. But I know that other nations will be using the victory of the Philippines in the arbitral tribunal in 2016. And of course, I would like to tell the Filipino people, when we won on July 12, 2016, at the arbitral tribunal, this was my quote: the victory of the West Philippine Sea is the victory of every Filipino. So, my dear kababayans, to our fellow Filipinos, let us defend our West Philippine Sea. Let us fight for our West Philippine Sea. Let us assert our sovereign rights in our West Philippine Sea. Long live the Filipino people, long live the Philippines, and we are praying always for the peace and stability in the West Philippine Sea and the Indo-Pacific region. And China, I hope you, you will think twice. It's about time for you to get out of the West Philippine Sea and all our seas in the Philippines and all our territories, and stop the occupation, the invasion, and militarization of our territories in the Philippines. Thank you very much, Dr. Lokman. Thank you so much for this privilege opportunity.
Dr. Celia, thank you very much. You're welcome. But by saying that, the, uh, are you as a Filipinos, you lose a hope from China that will peacefully stop or resolve these issues, at least in the foreseeable future?
Well, I would say time will come. I think China will think twice. As I said, if China would see, there would be a lot of many countries joining hand in hand in the joint patrols, in the military exercises. I think China will think twice already. I would say, and give economic sanctions against China. As I mentioned that already. When the pocket of China is hurt, China will think twice. So it's not only the Philippines who will do that, it should be all these nations. The claimant nations, of course, not only those who are claimant in the South China Sea, but of course, all the nations in the world that you think that what the Philippines is fighting for is just and right. So that's all I can say. And of course, I would like to add this. I'm calling President Marcos. I've been saying this. We have to give big fishing boats to our fishermen because our fishermen are the frontliners in our West Philippine Sea. Once you give them fishing boats, they can compete with the Chinese fishermen. And as you know, they have big vessels, right? And it's not only a few, there should be a lot. But I would say even a single needle cannot pass through. If you have those numbers of big fishing boats, I would say China will think twice. And not only that, President Marcos, the livelihood of our fishermen are being devastated, and they can have more cuts. Their livelihood will get better. So I would say. And not only that, Dr. Lokman, I would like to add this one.
Yes, please.
For the islands, okay, the Spratly Islands or the Calayan Islands, you have other islands. You know, Pag-asa Island or the Quito Island is the only inhabited island in the Kalayaan municipality or the Spratly Islands, you call in English. All right. Now, of course, we have civilian and military. I would recommend, make the other islands. We have the Likas, the Patag Island, Parola Island, make that, uh, I would say, sustainable, so we can bring our residents to stay there. So China, remember, China is only 12 nautical miles from Pag-asa Island. And there are some sandbars over there, but of course there are other islands there. The best is to put our civilian, I would say, the civilian residents there. But of course, we have to build infrastructures there. That's another one I'm calling President Marcos Jr. for that. Uh, we have to build more infrastructures also in Pag-asa Island. Make Pag-asa Island an international marine research institute or center, make it like a trade center, a business center. You have to give all the amenities. You have to the people of Pag-asa Island, and prove if you have all these amenities, services, more people will come in there. Okay, so there's so many things. I would say 7 years ago, or in 2015, it was my dream for that Pag-asa Island or Quito Island to become like a little Hong Kong, actually, Dr. Lokman. Yes. So I would
Yes.
say, and in that way,
Thank
uh,
you. Thank you very much, Dr. Celia, for this great
you
conversation.
you're most welcome, Dr. Lokman.
Yeah.
And I really
In,
thank you for giving me this opportunity to, you know, to talk what is in my mind, or, on and the facts and what's really happening in the West Philippine Sea. And yeah, I do
yes,
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
it is important for us also, for researchers, for academicians, to know about the South China Sea and also West Philippine Sea, what's going on. And it is, again, it's crucial to learn and listen from a person who are living in the region, and tell us from the Filipinos point of view. It's quite important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dr.
Okay.
Lokman.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Celia.
You're,
And
you're
also
welcome.
thank you very much for dear audiences who spare your time and listen our episodes until end of the show.
Thank you so
Have
much
a
to
good
all
night.
global.
Okay, have a good night, have a good morning, and have a good day for our audiences. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, share the link of the events with your friends, because we have upcoming events, and we will focus more on the Asia and Pacific region. Okay, see
All right.
you
Thank you.
on the next
See
upcoming
you.
show. See you.
See you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.